Welcome to As I Live and Grieve, a podcast that tells the truth about how hard this is. We're glad you joined us today. We know how hard it is to lose someone you love and how well-intentioned friends and family try so hard to comfort us. We created this podcast to provide you with comfort, knowledge, and support. We are grief advocates, not professionals, not licensed therapists. We are you.
Hi, everyone. Welcome back again to As I Live and Grieve. You hear this every week. You're going to hear it again. I have a great guest with me today in the studio. This is Reverend Tomas Garza. Welcome, Reverend Tomas. I'm so glad to have you here.
Well, thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. I really appreciate the invite.
Super. It's our privilege. And I keep saying our because Stephanie, my daughter, is part of this podcast, though now she works a full-time job, so can't really join me during the day. She does all of our editing, though. Before I ask questions, which I love to do, could you just give our listeners a little bit of your background, please?
Sure. Well, the long and the short of this is that I am a lifelong spiritual student. I think the best way to describe it is that's all that's really, really deeply mattered to me and what I've been interested in. I was raised in not one but two fundamentalist Christian traditions. The first one my parents left, the second one I left at age 15 when I got my driver's license. I no longer went back to Sunday school. And since then, I have studied and practiced a number of world traditions, including Tibetan Buddhism and shamanism. Now I'm a minister of metaphysical sciences, but my main focus for the last 10 years has been A Course in Miracles, which is what I teach right now. And I also work with clients privately as a spiritual mentor.
Oh, so many questions have popped up for me in that very, very brief background of you. Let me start with some of the easier ones first. Is there a difference between Tibetan Buddhism and Buddhism?
It's a type of Buddhism.
Okay.
There are three main branches of Buddhism, just like there are a couple of main branches of Christianity, Catholicism and Protestantism. Okay. So it's the same thing in the Buddhist tradition. In other words, there's sectarianism everywhere.
Okay. All right. That makes sense. Thank you for that. And the word metaphysical, what does that include?
As a minister of metaphysical sciences, that's pretty much everything. I take that, and other people that are ordained by the same organization take that to be universal spirituality. It's another way of saying the same thing.
All right. Now let's get to the meat of it. Spirituality. What is the difference, if any, between religion and spirituality?
Spirituality is universal, and religion may point to and talk about some universal truths, but it's not. Spirituality does not have the cultural limitations that religion does, and I'm thinking of the major world religions that arose in a particular area of the world, that arose in particular cultures at a particular time. And religion modernly, and this is something that I run into all the time, has become, for so many people, about a series of restrictions, a series of proscribed, prohibited behaviors, a lot of thou shalt not, and it's a limitation, whereas spirituality is broader, and it is indeed universal because we, in fact, are spirit. That's actually who and what we are.
That's fascinating. And probably one of the best descriptions I've heard to date. So that helps me a lot personally. So in spirituality then, is there a Father, Son, and Holy Ghost?
There is a Father, there is a Son, and there is a Holy Ghost. However, they're not three. They're one.
Okay. And as far as spirituality, and I think for me, spirituality, of course, as you said, universal, it's much, much broader and it's much more personal. It's in me. And just like we say grief is unique for every person, is it correct that spirituality is or can be different for every person?
Yes. While it's universal, the actual core of it is universal. So in other words, the content of spirituality, our oneness with God, is universal, yet the outward expressions vary widely, depending on the person, depending on cultures, depending on what someone brings to the table. So it really is, on that level, a highly personal journey.
Okay. Okay. And how important would you say that identifying with your own spirituality is related to grief?
Well, I would say it's critical.
Okay.
I would say it's central, and it's so helpful, related to everything, and up to and especially in courting, in a situation where someone is grieving. It's really important.
Okay. And is it possible for a person, and again, I think of myself, to feel that they have a spirituality as opposed to maybe the denomination that they were brought up in as a child? And I feel there's more out there, but I struggle with figuring out what that is and how it relates to me and how it might help me. I can hear, for example, a psychic medium talk, and the natural skeptic in me says, not sure I believe that. Yet I can listen to another psychic medium talk and immediately, yes, okay, I'm with you. I get it. I believe. So I struggle with my own spirituality in that aspect. Do you have any thoughts or tips for how I might better define my own spirituality?
I love this question.
Good.
I'm going to attempt to give as brief an
That's okay.
answer as I possibly
That's okay.
can, because this is really a subject that informs everyone's journey
right.
at some point. And what I think is really beautiful is that here in the 21st century, with access to our 21st century technology, every single spiritual tradition in the world is available. It's readily
Right.
available, but for the click of a mouse,
Right.
a Google search, there is absolutely no reason why, if somebody earnestly wants to explore their spirituality, there's no reason why they can't, other than their own fear, of course. But when it comes to our own personal walk, what I like to say here is there are many doors. Because spirituality is universal, there are many different approaches, and one approach that works for me is not necessarily going to work for you,
Right.
and vice versa. So what I always invite people to do is to get in touch with what I call, and what A Course in Miracles refers to as, our inner teacher.
Right.
And in other words, your guide, your guides. It could be whatever you want to call this.
Right.
Guidance. Doesn't matter what you call it, because it's only a name. But get in touch with that. And when something really deeply resonates with you, powerfully and strongly, when you make that connection, that's something to pay attention to. And as someone explores spirituality, there are inevitably going to be traditions and people that don't resonate on that level.
Right.
So it's a matter of bringing our awareness to what is resonating, what's connecting with us at any one given time. But that's where there's such an important distinction to make as learners between the outward form of a spiritual practice and the actual content. What it's saying is similar. In fact, it's exactly the same. deep down, but there are many doors. And it's a matter of getting in touch with your inner teacher. That's the term that's used in the course, but you're welcome to use the term your guide or guides if you have more than one.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So if something resonates with me, I should kind of pay attention to that and decide why it resonated. So, for example, if I read, say on Facebook, I read a certain poem and it really touches me. Is that the kind of thing you're talking about? To examine what the contents of that poem was and why it touches me and moves me so deeply?
That can be certainly one example of that, because this voice doesn't have to address us in a language that we're used to speaking. It can be something that someone else says, or it can just be an intuitive hit. It can be an idea that comes to us, and we pay attention to that, and then we may be guided to click on someone's website.
Okay.
We may be guided to purchase a certain book or listen to a certain podcast. Mm-hmm. And it's a matter of moment to moment paying attention to that.
All right. And then anything really that moves us, that's part of our spirituality. I guess I'm still struggling with it. How can I define it? I mean, is it so simple as if I feel skepticism, for example, when I listen to a psychic medium, should I try to interact and have a reading and see how then I feel or not?
That's a matter of how strong the intuitive hit is, because you could possibly, it's very plausible to get a message, an intuitive hit that says, yeah, this person's not for you. Run away.
Okay. Okay.
In that case, we'd do well to, in this example, not get that reading. And there's nothing wrong with that. And as far as a definition of spirituality, I say it's life itself.
I like that. Maybe I'm trying too hard. Maybe I should just kind of roll with the punches, and the things that really make me feel something, explore them to whatever extent I'm interested. Maybe that's a better method for me at this stage.
Well, yeah, and I think that there's a lot of wisdom in that, because another thing that's really true for me, and the longer I practice and the more I teach, the more people I work with, it becomes apparent to me that this whole process for all of us is about learning to relax and trust. It's about learning to lean into that inner guidance and trust that inner guidance. And it's perfectly okay to be confused in the present moment because, well, we've got lots of complications in life.
Right, that's true. And the point you made about there being so many resources, so to speak, I'll just put that word to it, like on the internet and everything that we can click on, that may also make it a little more difficult for us because we can go down those, Stephanie and I call them rabbit holes. If you decide to click on one and then click on another and another and another, and before you know it, you're many clicks away from what you first intended to find out about.
Yes, isn't that technology beautiful?
I know. I know. So how can your spirituality help you when you're grieving?
It helps so much because one of the core ideas about spirituality in general is it's about a connection. So when someone is grieving, it provides, in my own experience, a way to celebrate a connection and appreciate a connection that you have with a person. Let's just say the example of somebody who's passed. And it's about recognition that just because this person's physical body is no longer with us. They're, in fact, still with us, because at our core, we're actually not a physical body at all. And that's what we all know deep down. It's why we're drawn to spiritual practice in the first place. It's this intuitive hit or a sense, even if it's fleeting, that there's got to be something more to it than this. There's got to be another way. So when one is grieving, it's a way to maintain and to celebrate a connection that you've had with this person.
Okay. And if you are grieving and you are isolating yourself, maybe to the extent even that you're not venturing onto the internet, but maybe you're just really isolating yourself all by yourself at home with no one around you, can your spirituality still play a part in that?
Yes, it can. And in those types of situations where someone's isolating themselves, we cannot isolate ourselves from ourselves.
Okay.
Basically.
Makes sense. Yeah.
We can attempt to run and hide, and we can sit in a dark room or crawl into a closet or a dark space and shut the door, but we're still with ourselves. So that means, in terms of spirituality, that your self with a capital S, if you go along with that term, which some may, some may not, but you're always with yourself. Your guide, your inner teacher, is inner and always with you and is always accessible, which doesn't mean that someone won't be so upset or grieving or feeling distraught that they'll be able in the moment to access that guidance, but it is nevertheless still present.
Okay. So I have felt that for myself, I reached a point in my grief. It's been almost 5 years since I lost my husband. It was probably at about I want to say the 1 to 2 month mark when I started thinking to myself, I can't go on like this. I can't go on not doing anything. And I feel, because I was reading books and everything, that it was probably my spirituality, my inner teacher, that helped me move on. And eventually, and I say move on, but move on to the point where I feel I have a better life now than I had before my husband died. I'm happy, probably happier in a different way. I certainly miss him. I still grieve the loss, but I have managed to move on to the extent where I have a good life and I'm grateful for it. I like to think that it was my spirituality that I listened to that helped me get here. Okay. Is that fair?
Yes.
Okay.
And in fact, it probably was your spirituality. And how people access that and tap into it, really, I mean, it varies, doesn't it? Because some people can simply say at one point, I don't want to feel this way, right. Or they can ask for help, right? Please help. I mean, even that is an invitation, right. Which can really, it's more powerful than we imagine it to be, because it really starts things moving in the other direction.
Right. The hardest part, I think, is to find that motivation within you at a very dark period in your life, to find enough motivation to get up off that couch, for example, and take a shower, put on clean clothes, and start to figure out what it is you need to do.
Yes. And one thing, and I don't know if this is something that you found worked well for you, but one thing that I often talk about when I'm mentoring someone is that a lot of this moment to moment, it can be about reaching for a better feeling in the present moment? How do you reach for a better feeling in the present moment, even if you're sitting on the couch and you don't want to get up at all today? You're not motivated to even go to the bathroom, even, or much less take a shower, or go off to work or feed yourself or anything. I mean, that's something that happens to us from time to time, and it can be about not solving the entire problem all at once, which is not, it's not even really possible to do that. But what we can do is reach for a better feeling in the present moment, because we're not going to automatically wave a magic wand. Wouldn't it be great if we had one and we could wave it and we would absolutely feel great immediately. But, how can you feel a little bit better in the present moment? There's a lot of power to even saying to yourself, I don't want to feel this way.
There is. And then listening to that voice is the other thing. Listening to that.
Yes.
And, it's not fair to equate it to dieting, but it has some similarities in that I know I'm not supposed to eat that cupcake. It's not good for me. And just not being able to find the motivation to really accomplish it. There are some similarities. Although I think if you stay isolated and stuck in your grief, that's going to have some longer lasting effects, but maybe not. I guess that's up for debate. But that struggle and that whole thing, I kind of feel that spirituality is the key when you're grieving, that you have to be open to it, whether it's a voice that comes from within you, whether it's prompted by something you see on TV or on the internet, but you have to be open almost to that signal, that sign.
Yes. It's a matter of openness and awareness, which is why meditation is a thing in so many world spiritual traditions. It's about returning that awareness, bringing that awareness back, because we notice immediately how easy it is to become distracted. And it's about bringing our awareness back. It's really, really powerful. So we can bring that awareness back at any time, including when we're in a period of deep grief.
Okay. Then let's talk about that for a second. Meditation. What if you've never meditated in your life?
Then you can start, because you have time for your next breath.
Okay. All right.
Really. We don't have to. There's this popular myth, and we're both in the United States, and I think it's true of many world societies and cultures. There's this prevailing belief that in order to meditate, you have to take up robes and move off to the Himalayas and take a monastic vow. And who has time for that when you've got a job and kids and all of that? Yet a fully beneficial and powerful meditation can be as simple as one cycle of breath. And we all, we hope, have time for that one next breath. And what all you have to do is place your awareness on one inhale and one exhale breath, and just let your thoughts be where they are. It can be very, very short.
Interesting.
And then, of course, I invite you to take the next breath.
Of course.
And you could choose to. Yeah, that's a good thing. Don't forget to breathe and be aware of that next breath as well. That meditation is simple like that.
What about guided meditations?
I think they can be really, really powerful. There are some excellent guided meditations that are available, again, with our 21st century technology. People have a lot of options. And many people feel that they don't have the predisposition or the proclivity or the patience to do it on their own. And to have a guide is a tremendous aid to them.
All right.
Oh, yeah.
And then how do you feel meditation can help you if you're grieving? What can it do for you?
I am not a certified expert in the physical bodily
Right.
benefits of meditation, but they're well documented. Taking a deep inhale and exhale breath oxygenates our system, which helps reduce stress instantly.
Okay.
So we don't have to be a scientific expert to see that.
Right.
But what it does, so a practice like meditation is just about bringing yourself back. It's bringing yourself back and dropping a narrative that exists in our mind. Whatever that may be, it's about letting that go, even if it's only for a couple of seconds. And the more one practices that letting go, the more of a gap opens up between a stimulus, could be a thought, could be something that appears to happen outside of us, and our habitual reaction to that, our response, whatever that is. And within that gap, as it lengthens, we can make different choices.
Interesting. Maybe I should have meditated more when I was grieving, but I guess I can start. Some people, I think, use guided meditation to help them fall asleep at night. Is that valuable? And might that help someone who's grieving that's having trouble sleeping?
Yes. My instant reaction is yes, I think that would really help, because that's one of the things that many people report is a poor sleep quality. Right. And if that helps, then I think that's tremendous.
Okay. And do you have some resources that you can mention, maybe someone's name that has good guided meditations so that someone doesn't fall down that rabbit hole?
Yeah. I think that there are many good ones on Insight Timer, which is an app actually that someone can download on their smartphone. It's called Insight Timer, and there are many excellent guided meditations there. Very peaceful, and there's going to have to be some degree of experimentation if somebody's just starting out, because it's like with spirituality in general, you've got to see what resonates with you and what you connect with. And every day there's more and more information available. So the connection to one's inner teacher becomes even more important the more our modern technology expands, the more the internet grows, and the more options we have at our fingertips, because we still only have the present moment.
Right. Okay, our time is winding down quickly. I think we're going to have to invite you back for a second appearance, because we haven't even answered the questions I have on the metaphysical side.
Oh, all right.
And that's probably...
Well, I would be delighted,
Thank
actually.
you. And to be fair, that's probably an entire podcast on its own. Now, speaking of podcasts, do you still have your podcast?
I am taking a brief break from that, yes, but I have a show that's had many lifetimes and different iterations.
Well, then, as we wind down, let me turn the mic over to you, and you can tell all of our listeners, we have listeners in 78 countries, you can tell all of our listeners about your shows and anything, and services you offer, anything you wish to convey to them. Go right ahead.
All right. Thank you. Well, what I would invite people to do is, if you're interested in A Course in Miracles, or interested more about the ideas and the metaphysical principles that I'm talking about in this show, my own background, I would invite you to check out my YouTube channel. It's Reverend Tomas Garza. On YouTube, what I do is I offer 5 or 6, 15 to 20-minute conversations a week on A Course in Miracles. So that's frequent. And I'll be starting a longer 60-minute or so weekly live stream in February. And you can find all the details there. I'll be offering that on my Patreon page, and it's Reverend Tomas Garza. Again, you'll see the links here. But that's beginning in February. You're also welcome to visit my website, tomasgarza.com. And Insight Timer is the meditation app that I would recommend. There are others out there, but that one has some very good guided meditations. So if you're new to that, it's a good resource.
Sounds great. Thank you. And as always, listeners, we will include contact information for Reverend Tomas on our episode notes on the podcast and also on our website. So you can reach out to him directly, or you can contact us and we will forward your inquiry on to him, whichever you prefer. Sadly, it has come time to say farewell again. I dislike when this happens every time because it's always such fascinating discussion, but I take faith and hope in the fact that we'll just have another chance. That's all. So listeners, again, remember to take care of yourselves. Maybe try the meditation, whether you do it on your own breath by breath or whether you look for a guided meditation to help you. There was so much content in this podcast that you may want to listen to it a second time. I know I'm going to listen to it back, probably before it's even edited. And we do hope that you will stay well, stay healthy, practice self-care, and come back next week again as we all continue to live and grieve.
Thank you so much for listening with us today. Do you have a topic that you'd like us to cover, or do you have a question from one of our episodes? Please email us at info@asiliveandgrieve.com and let us know. We hope you will find a moment to leave a review, send an email, and share with others. Join us next time as we continue to live and grieve together.